Welcome to Album Swap, the show where we swap some bops. This week,
I recommended Joe Grand Opening and Closing by Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. I predict that Joe will give this album a 6.5.
But yeah, so a Sleepytime Gorilla Museum are a California avant-garde like metal band. Grand Opening and Closing is their debut studio album, I believe. This album has so many, I guess, interesting influences in it. Like, the biggest one for me is nu metal, for sure. There's a lot of this stylistically comes from nu metal, but is then, like, taken through a very avant-garde lens, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Especially the vocals. So the vocals, they're, like, the most nu metal-y part, I'd say. The lead singer reminds me a lot of Korn's lead singer, especially Korn's lead singer kind of does this like scat stuff throughout the music, and that comes up somewhat on this record. I'd say specifically on 1997 that kind of happens. He also kind of reminds me of Corey Taylor a lot from Slipknot. And then a very weird one, it reminds me a lot of Tobuscus, which it's very odd, but it's hard to describe why, but there's like an animatedness to him that reminds me of Tobuscus at some points. Tobuscus is kind of a shitty person though, so I think the biggest problem with this album is just that it's kind of inconsistent. So then you have like a track like The Stain, which I really just don't like. The entire track is just them like using a bunch of like random noises, and it just does not work at all. It doesn't add anything to the atmosphere of the album. It doesn't really add anything to this like insane vibe or style that's kind of present throughout. And it just, I think, sounds like shit, honestly. It just feels like random noises are being played for no real reason. And I think that's really the biggest problem, is just it's kind of inconsistent in that respect. A lot of tracks have this very long build throughout, and I think sometimes that isn't really satisfyingly paid off. Like a track like Ablutions, which is kind of just all build. There isn't really a payoff to it. However, I do think there's also a lot of really great tracks on here. Some very interesting ones. So you have a track like Powerless, which I think is really fantastic. Powerless has this like insane oppressive atmosphere to it that is really compelling. I love on this track the super intense screams of Powerless throughout. It's just like a super cool payoff, and there's this like interesting like bouncy sound almost with the instrumentation that I think is really cool and probably my favorite part of the track. It's super weird, but I think it works excellently. You also have a track like 1997, which I think is like, it's almost like straight out of a nu metal record. It has this like very cool like groovy riff used throughout. It's probably the most insane sounding track on it. It has just a fantastic kinetic energy to it that is super compelling. The vocals, I think I already mentioned, but they remind me a lot of Korn in terms of the vocals. And I think that insanity to them helps a ton with that track. Also Sleepytime, which I think should have been the concluding track on this album. I love the instrumentation. I think the build is really good, although I think it's a bit long. And then when the guitars come in, they just come like crashing down. They're super oppressive, really fantastic. And the vocals on this track also are very reminiscent of like Corey Taylor's, and I think they work really well. I do wish that it ended with Sleepytime, because I think Sunflower is okay as an outro. It's just kind of a nothing song almost. There's an atmosphere kind of to it, but it's just not, I just don't think it's that interesting. It's just so sparse, and there's nothing to really grab onto with it, and I really think Sleepytime would have been a much better conclusion to the album. It feels much more final than Sunflower, and I think that would have, taking out Sunflower would have helped a lot. This week for Album Swap, I recommended Brendan Pocket Full of Kryptonite by The Spin Doctors. I predict Brendan will give the Spin Doctors album considering he already said to me before we recorded that he hated it, I'm gonna go with a 10 out of 10 as my prediction. I think that he will absolutely adore it.
Today I'll be reviewing Pocketful of Kryptonite by Spin Doctors. This is the band's debut studio album, which arrived in 1991. This album is a funk rock and alternative rock record. Okay, let's talk about the positives of this album. Two Princes was in Lego Rock Band. Alright, let's talk about the negatives of this album.
Whoa. Whoa. It's true, though. It was in Lego Rock Band.
It was in Lego Rock Band, though.
It's also the best song in Lego Rock Band, so... fuck you, Brendan.
From it. This album, I am not a fan of it. I'll say that. Spin Doctors feel wholly uninspired. There's nothing unique about this album. Not even in like how bad it sounds. Most of the time it doesn't sound terrible. It just sounds bad. There are a couple times where it sounds terrible. Like on More Than She Knows, the guitar throughout that track, just garbage. Sounds terrible. For the most part, this is passable, I'd say. At best, they're like a discount Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is fine. Their instrumentation is not interesting. It's certainly, they don't show to have the same ability to create these catchy instrumentals like Red Hot Chili Peppers does. And the vocals are, how do I say this? Complete garbage. Yeah, complete garbage. I hate the vocals like throughout the entire record. My favorite point on this record is there's about like a 2-minute section of Shinbone Alley where it's just the band jamming and there's no vocals. That part's good. I like that part. But for the most part, the vocals, the way they're delivered is generic and bland, and the lyrics themselves are written by a 12-year-old or something of the sort. That's what it feels like most of the time. Reading them makes me want to claw my eyes out, which was just a really fun experience when trying to really dive into this album.
This album is a masterpiece, okay? The vocals, oh my god, they're so great. They fit so perfectly with the groovy, fun riffs on the album. Oh my god, it's wow. Just like, holy crap, this album, it's so good. You got like the opening riff, like and it's like, it's super catchy, and it's like, whoa. And then you got like, what time is it? Is 4:30 apparently. And then come on, you got a Little Miss, She Can't Be Wrong, and it's like Little Miss Can't Be Wrong, and it's super catchy, and it's like, whoa. Two Princes, best song ever made. Yeah.
Okay. As a bit of a rebuttal, Jimmy Olsen's Blues, the instrumentation on that track is like fine. The lyrics are garbage. What time is it? It's actually probably one of the better sounding tracks. To me, it just sounds like Red Hot Chili Peppers though, which is a huge drawback. Also, lyrics are garbage again. Little Miss Can't Be Wrong. I hate the hook. It hurts me. It's annoying. It's just so annoying, and I can't listen to it. Two Princes, honestly, Two Princes is fine. It was in Lego Rock Band, so that means it can't be bad if it was in Lego Rock Band. For the most part, this album is uninspired, unengaging, and sometimes just downright bad. I don't enjoy listening to it.
What the fuck is wrong with you, Brendan? You are clearly an uncultured swine. You should be hanged, sentenced to guillotine. What the fuck is wrong with you? This is a masterpiece. Come on, you got like, come on, you got like Little Miss Can't Be Wrong. It's like, you got like, well, you got two princes. There's two of them. Refrigerator car. Come on, who doesn't remember refrigerator car? I don't remember refrigerator car, if I'm being honest. Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. I think this is a very interesting album. I think it's a bit inconsistent in terms of its sound, and I don't think it always succeeds in building the atmosphere it wants to, but I still think it's a very compelling album in a lot of respects. When it does succeed with its like oppressive atmosphere, I think it works incredibly well. So yeah, I think it's a pretty decent album, worthwhile to check out. I'd give it like a 6 to a 6.5 out of 10. I think it's interesting, but it definitely feels kind of flawed.
As for Pocketful of Kryptonite by Spin Doctors, this album is bland and boring. There are times where it just sounds bad.
So clearly it's a 10 out of 10. If you don't give it a 10 out of 10, I'm going to hate you forever.
I'm not into it. I'm at a 3 out of 10.
Oh no. Oh no.
You're slightly off with your prediction.
Oh no, Brendan. Brendan, how could you do this to Spin Doctors?
Easily.
They just spin in those doctors. Hey, if you enjoyed our Hey, if you enjoyed our review, please leave a like, consider subscribing. Although you probably didn't enjoy Brendan's review because he's a piece of shit. Fuck him. Spin Doctors, greatest band on earth.